Hello. I would like to begin by introducing myself. My name is Scott Ertz, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Plug Kids Live, an online publication in which we talk about technology, news, reviews, and previews, as well as a host and producer of F5 Live Refreshing Technology, a live cast in which we discuss many of the topics that we write about on Plug Kids Live. I cover events, small from local events to large industry trade shows like the Consumer Electronics Association, and I'm a contributor to other websites as well. I introduce myself so that my comments are within the proper context, not for any personal identification, as well as for the belief that, like Ron Swanson on Parks and Rec, I believe that if you have something to say, you sign your name to it, and this is my way of signing my name. Now, I want to make it very clear that though Plug Kids Live is publishing this video as an editorial, my views are my own and do not necessarily represent the views of Plug Kids Live, the parent company, any of my team members, or our sponsors and partners. With that said, I would like to discuss something that happened this week as part of my industry. Our industry has always had tabloids. When I was a kid, tabloids like the National Enquirer would have Bigfoot sightings and UFOs and, Elvis on their covers as their main stories. And they were kind of like a low-cost science fiction conspiracy theory publication, to the point where the Men in Black movie referred to them as a great source of information because it turned out that the crazy things that we were reading were actually true, and they sounded so crazy that nobody could possibly believe that they were true. At some point, though, tabloids changed from being fun-to-read nonsense to being stalker-type publications where they would discuss celebrities and political officials instead of Elvis and Bigfoot. I don't know what precipitated that change, but it does appear to be here to stay, for better or worse, and I would say for worse. While the old days, the content was silly and fun to read, today it is often damaging in one way or another. Now, I think that there are three different types of damaging. First, there's people like the desperate hookers of Santa Fe, or whatever those shows are, where you allow yourself to become the subject of public scrutiny and speculation. And so if, the National Enquirer wants to guess as to whether one of the whatever Santa Fe people or wherever those shows take place gave away a child when they were a teenager, whatever. Those people have put themselves in that spotlight, and because of that, I don't like it, but I don't have a fundamental issue with it necessarily. I don't like it. I would never read it, and I think that the general population shouldn't either, because I think it contributes to the dumbing down of the human brain, but that's whatever. If you enjoy it, great. Then there's the stuff that's damaging to somebody's career or pride, but based on things they've actually done. For example, Gawker leaking the sex tape of Hulk Hogan, or TMZ publishing naked photos of Justin Bieber. If you're Hulk Hogan and you're having an affair and you film it, and it leaks, you were still having an affair and you filmed a sex tape. I know in that particular case it wasn't voluntary, but it was filmed, and how do you not realize that there's a camera rolling? But in any case, you were still having an affair. If you're Justin Bieber and you know that since you were 15, you haven't had 30 seconds to yourself, and there is always a camera pointed at you, public nudity may not have been the best choice to keep your body private. Now, again, do I like it? Of course not. I think it's patently disgusting, both as a publisher and as a content consumer. I think it's patently disgusting. And I think it's inappropriate and damages the industry as a whole. Then there's the third type, in which unsuspecting people are damaged personally, professionally, or in this particular case, safety-wise. So before we talk about what happened, let me talk about my organization here. While I may be in our studio and in front of our backdrop, I want to make it very clear that there are no logos. I'm not even wearing our show branding, which I always do. Basically in public, I'm always branded. This case, I am not, because I am talking about the organization from my own perspective. So, as editor-in-chief, my main role is to ensure a culture within the organization that is maintained across everybody. Now, from time to time, that gets away from us. From time to time, something gets published that is not appropriate, but it is always dealt with quickly and swiftly. And so if something got past me, I would expect everybody involved to bear responsibility, because I believe, like I said earlier, that first you put your name to something, and that you are responsible for what you do and say. And so here we have a culture of mutual respect. And I believe that that is important, not just in our publication, but in the industry as a whole, much like HBO's The Newsroom and their founding principles. Ours are very similar. First, I believe that everybody that shows respect deserves respect. Now, there are instances in which somebody forfeits that right, and respect can be taken away. You don't just get it. It's not magic. You do have to earn it, or perhaps earn a lack of respect. For example, when Mark Hurd, the former CEO of HP, was found to have essentially a hooker on the corporate payroll, that was a story that we covered on Plug Hits Live, because not because it was a sex scandal, because that wasn't important, but because our part two is that the story has to be important to the cultural conversation. Now, just like in politics, I believe that in capitalism, one of the founding principles is a well-informed consumer base, because capitalism and republic are very similar in that you vote, and in capitalism you vote with your dollars, and you should not spend money with an organization who you do not agree with, or who is doing things that you find to be inappropriate. So, if a company is using materials that you don't agree with, you shouldn't purchase their products, no matter how enticing they may be. If a company does something you don't like, speak with your dollars. And because of that, we felt it was important to cover that particular topic about Mark Hurd, not because of the sex scandal, but because the executive of a corporation was making bad decisions with money that they were entrusted with, and the board of directors made a good decision by letting him go. In the interest of full disclosure, Mark Hurd is now the CEO of Oracle. Do with that information as you may. But we always try to put our topics in context of why it matters to you. And so that is why we covered that particular topic, not because of the sex scandal, but because it was important to consumers to have all the information before purchasing a product, because at the time, HP was the largest producer of computers. It was an important piece of information to have. not because we were trying to sensationalize the story, because it was a sex story and sex sells. That had nothing to do with it. It had everything to do with the consumer importance of the topic. Now, obviously, the whole industry does not necessarily feel that way. And with that, let's talk about what happened this week. One of the writers for The Daily Beast, which is a British-based tabloid, is in Rio for the Olympic Games and decided to do, I don't know, to try and feel important and do an undercover expose, or I don't know what he thought he was doing. Let's try and give him the benefit of the doubt that he wasn't just being an ass and instead thought he had some journalistic integrity in this. I don't think that that's the case, but let's, for the current topic, let's assume that that was his intention. Here's what he did. He took his smartphone and walked around the athletes' village with a gay dating app called Grindr, on which he created a profile. Now, it's important to note, as he does many times in the piece, that he is a heterosexual male. He asserts it many times to make sure that there is no denying that he is straight. With a wife and kids, I believe. I don't care about him enough to know for sure, but I believe that's what he said. So this self-proclaimed many times straight male created a profile on a gay dating app and used it to lure unsuspecting gay Olympic athletes into revealing their identities to him. So, first, he's a liar. Obviously, despite saying several times in the piece that he's not a liar because he used his actual picture, which you're a writer for a British tabloid, I can guarantee you the Chilean delegation does not have any idea who you are. Because the Chileans don't read British tabloids. They don't know who you are. So using your real picture is unimportant. That would be like me using my real picture. It simply doesn't matter. Second, his intention was to out closeted gay athletes. For what reason? The entertainment of the reading public, maybe just his own entertainment. I don't know. We can't know what his intentions were because he's his own person, and people do things for whatever reasons that they do. So both of those are disgusting, patently disgusting, and he should be ashamed of himself for doing it. But as terrible as those things are, there's more at stake here. Now, here in the United States, we are mostly fortunate in that the majority of the population has a positive view of the gay community. But even here in the U.S., we're not necessarily safe. I am recording this late in the evening on August 12th, 2 months to the day after the shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, in which I lost a very good friend, in what was supposed to be a safe place for the gay community, in a gay nightclub. And even today, as I woke up, I found a story on Facebook where a good friend and former colleague found a woman harassing a gay man at a gas station and shouted a slur at him. And that happened here in 2016 in both of those things here in Florida, in the United States. So, and that's in a country that has a very positive view of the gay community in general. Now let's take, for example, that the Olympics are made up of the majority of countries, and there are a number of countries in which being closeted is important. Now, there are out gay athletes. Tom Daley is a great example, possibly the best example, because when he came out between the last Olympics and this one, his country and the world accepted him as, well, partially because I think the majority of the world had guessed it already, but he was accepted with open arms and went on to win a medal in diving this week. And his country celebrated his win. But there are countries in which it is dangerous or illegal to be gay. There are countries where if you were to be outed against your will, for example, at the Olympic Games, when you returned home, you could face violence from your neighbors. You could face jail time or even execution by your government. Obviously, for those reasons, being closeted is important. It's not necessarily about being ashamed of who you are, but it's about the real life dangers of the community in which you live. Now, in this piece, Nico Hines reveals identifying information about several gay athletes that he encountered on Grindr, which also is intended to be a safe place for expression because it's a place for gay males. You don't expect to find anybody else on there, certainly not with nefarious intentions like this Nico Hines had. So in his story, he even admitted that at least one of the people who he outed, not by name, but by a very clear description that a simple Bing search would return their identities, that they are from countries in which it is dangerous for them to be themselves, and then proceeded to out them anyway, despite what could and very likely may happen to them upon the end of the games and their return home. So while the first two aspects of this are patently disgusting, the third aspect is irresponsible and totally inappropriate. Now, the initial reaction from the Daily Beast was meh, and they left the story. And then after enough people complained, they removed the identifying information from the story, which indicates that either they are fully stupid or were just trying to placate the public with a meaningless show, because anybody with a brain knows that the internet never forgets. You can't delete content. Once it's out there, it's out there. I guarantee there are screenshots of the story. There are copies of the story that exist. I can all but guarantee both Google and Bing have indexed the story, which means finding it would not be difficult, and it's always the Wayback Machine. If you really want to ruin the internet for somebody, the Wayback Machine will show everybody's mistakes at some point in their past. So deleting the identifying information was either a meaningless show to shut up the masses or an indication that the editorial staff of the Daily Beast are morons and believed that deleting that content actually meant something, in which case what I'm going to call for in a minute is not enough. Later in the day, they then removed the article entirely, which, again, either a meaningless show or an indication that they're stupid. And then later, they wrote an apology that was half-hearted at best and unsigned as well. And like I said earlier, I believe that if you have something important to say, you sign your name to it, as I have done here by putting both my name and my face associated with this editorial. They did not do that. They signed it the editorial staff, which is the faceless mob. Who cares? If something like this had happened inside of my organization, let me tell you what would have happened. The writer would have pitched the story to one of my editors. And the editor would have said, hold on, I need to have a discussion with Scott. And the editor would have come to me and said, hey, so we have a problem. We have a pitch that is way outside of our founding principles and outside of our core values. I think we need to have a discussion with the writer and potentially terminate them for even pitching this terrible idea. And I would have agreed. We would have had a conversation, and the writer probably would not have survived the conversation because it's a patently disgusting concept. And everybody knows it right from the beginning. It's disgusting. Now, let's assume that there was, as the Daily Beast suggested, a organizational failure. And it made it past the editor. The editor approved the story. It was written. It was published. It made it to the web. My job would be to have both of them in a conversation about our core values here in the organization, and neither one of them would have survived the conversation. The content would have come down, and I would do everything in my power. I would contact all of my sponsors, and I would find a way. There's one particular sponsor that I will not mention, but who is very good at helping people in need. I would probably contact them and say, hey, we have a problem. There are some people who are in danger because of a mistake by my staff. We need to figure out how to protect them. And I would have done everything in my power to figure out how to protect the people who had been put in danger. If, for whatever reason, which obviously never would have happened, if I had responded the way the Daily Beast's editorial staff responded, I would expect that the board of directors of our parent company, of which I am a member, but I would expect that the board of directors would relieve me of duty because it was my failure as well. My failure, the editor's failure, and the writer's failure. I would expect that everybody involved would be relieved because it's the appropriate thing to do. And so with that said, my recommendation to the governing board of the Daily Beast, I do not know how your corporation is structured, but however it is, my recommendation to your executive board, your board of directors, your chief executive, whoever is in charge of making decisions like this, my recommendation is that you do the same. I believe that Nico Hines should be terminated immediately for his failure as a human being and as a employee of your corporation. I believe that the editors who were involved in approving and then covering up the huge mistake of their staff should be terminated, and I believe your editor-in-chief should also be disciplined either in termination or in a demotion because clearly they are not fit for their job. I believe that anything short of doing that is a way of saying that you are not worried about or do not care about the safety of the Olympic athletes that your employees very crassly put in danger upon the end of the games and the return to their home countries. And I believe that that makes you also responsible for whatever happens to them. I believe that your board of directors should figure out how to protect these athletes that your employees have put in danger. I do not necessarily know what that might be. You might get your ambassadors involved or something because you're a large publication who can discuss things with your government, and your ambassadors could be brought in. I do not know what it looks like, but I believe your organization needs to do something to protect the safety and potentially the lives of the athletes that your employee, Nico Hines, put in danger willingly and negligently. That is my recommendation to your corporation. I don't know if you will listen, but as a member of the general public as a whole, the community, the industry, and as somebody who has lost a very dear friend to violence against the gay community, I am personally, professionally offended by the actions of your employee, the actions of your employees thus far, your entire editorial staff, and I believe that the executive board of your corporation needs to do something about it.